From Chino, I was sent to the prison at Soledad. I was taken off the bus and put directly in the hole. I was put in the cell with my little homie Lil Rat. I taught him the small amount of Swahili that I knew. He asked if I was hooked up and I told him I was. He was curious and wanted to be in the organization, but I told him to be certain that it was what he wanted to do. Just because I was in didn't mean he should be in. I told him to think about it. That day I was let out to the general population. Little Spike, Sea-Dog, and Raton from the set were out on the main line and greeted me cordially. We talked and kicked it about old times, but they sensed something wasn't right when they found me reluctant to speak on the war between the 60s and us. I told them I wasn't into the set tripping, tribalism thing anymore. I told them that it was now all about the unification of the C Nation under the government of the CCO. They freaked. "Cuz, you hooked up?" Raton asked. He'd been down since he and my brother had been captured in 1981 for the payback killings in response to my shooting. "Yeah, I'm in. You?" "Nah, never was my style." "I know all of them though." "Where they hook you up at? The county?" "Damn, cuz," said Lil Spike. "Why you go out like that?" "What you mean out like that?" It was the first time I heard someone say anything remotely against the CCO. "I mean, the set is the only organization you need," he continued. "It held you fine till you came to prison. So why it won't hold you now?" "I ain't left the set. I just think that we could be stronger combined as a nation than as a little set. After all, we all Crips." "I kill Crips," Lil Spike declared. "I'm a gangster." "He's right, monster," added Raton. "Remember what Rayside used to tell us about that?" "Fuck Rayside," I exploded. "Where's he at now, huh? That shit was cool out there as long as we had guns in our hands and dope in our systems. But that 60-90 killer shit ain't gonna work for us here, cuz. It ain't gonna work. We got too many other enemies to be tripping on each other. Too many. Until Rayside come to prison and walk the yard and see what we gotta deal with daily, monthly, yearly. Cuz can't tell me shit." "I don't know, homie," Sea-Dog said. He was the youngest of us all. "How many 60s here?" I asked him. "3. "How many 90s? "None." "How many Mexicans from the South? And how many Nazis?" "Shit, about 300 or so, but you see," I said. "But they ain't killed no A-Trays," Raton countered. "They've killed black people. They've killed Crips. It's just a matter of time, Rat. You been down 5 years, you know?" "Yeah, you right. I always be from A-Tray. That's my neighborhood. But I was born black." "Monster, you tripping though," Spike said. "Nah, Spike, you tripping. I ain't ashamed of being black. I know I came from Africa. I am a soldier for my people, all citizens of the C Nation." "Yeah, alright, monster. We're gonna see how long you think like that," Lil Spike said, looking over the top of his logs at the others. "Yeah," I said, standing to walk away. "You'll see." My commanding officer was Kidogo, Whiskey from Santana Block, who I had known from the county jail back in the early 80s. But the line was being run by Drac from 6 Deuce East Coast. He had been there 2 or 3 years. There were 13 of us CCOs in Soledad. I was in charge of C-Wing. It was my duty to make sure that no Crips came out of the tiers with shower thongs on, because this was a security risk. One couldn't very well defend himself in shower shoes. I had to make sure that there were at least 2 knives out on the tier and available whenever we were out on the wing or in the day room. I designated 2 people to carry the weapons. Anytime one of us took a shower, the area was cordoned off and secured. A quiet period was designated from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. Every Saturday was mass exercise day. All 212 Crips would form 3 huge circles on the yard and go through the routine. Kidogo was dissatisfied with Drac and petitioned the Central Committee to remove him. He had to go to Folsom for court in a stabbing incident and said he'd handle it down there. I was left second in command. When Kidogo returned, Drac was removed for ineptitude and poor leadership. Kidogo and I forged ties with the other new African groups there, UBN, Vanguards, BGFs, and 415s. We networked with communication, military intelligence, and in some cases weaponry. We got our hacksaw blades from the 415s who worked as plumbers. I had Crips in C-Wing cutting steel off everything to make weapons. There was never a shortage of knives or people to make them. One afternoon I came into the wing from the yard and found Red from shotgun showering with no cover. I went in the day room and there was a shark from Harlem watching soap operas. I asked him who had security and he said he did. I told him to go and cover Red in the shower. But Doc from West Covina, who was on the disciplinary crew, those who were used to stab and beat lawbreakers, said he'd supply cover for Red. Well, that wasn't his job, so I again told Shark to go handle it. When he left, I called over Zach from Hoover and began discussing the lax atmosphere. Unexpectedly, Shark came stomping back into the day room saying how tired he was of being a security guard and how he wanted some action. I asked him where Red was. He said he had left him in the shower. I exploded and slapped him hard across the face. He responded by reaching for his waistband where he kept the knife. But before he could draw it, Doc stepped up and put his knife to Shark's throat. I disarmed Shark and slapped him again. If you would have pulled this Kisu out, I would have killed you. Now get your sorry ass out of my face, motherfucker. He staggered out of the day room holding his face. I gave the Kisu to Zach and he took up the slack at the shower. Doc stayed by me. That evening I held a meeting in the back of the unit to explain the importance of security. Today we had a problem with our security, I began, looking disgustedly at Shark, that we shouldn't have had. Don't y'all know what's going on in Folsom and San Quentin? War, that's what. And it's just a matter of time before the Sureños try to strike at us. We gotta be ready. They ain't gonna walk up to our face and stab us. They're gonna bring their sneaky asses up from behind and stab us in the back. So we have to watch out for one another. Secure one another, dig? And another thing, I want to apologize to the community for disciplining Shark in public when I should have taken him to a discreet area. It won't happen again. A few others spoke and the meeting was adjourned. The next day I was given orders by Quiroga to plant one in a renegade from Folsom. The following week, G-Wing erupted in an all-out knife fight. The southern Mexicans attacked the northern Mexicans and the pigs started blasting away. The Americans were herded into the day room. Since the southern Mexicans and the Americans were allies and the New Africans and the Northerners were allies, the New Africans attacked the Americans, stabbing 7 of them. 1 prisoner was shot and killed. It was during this time that the New African community at Soledad began to get flack from one particular pig. That one particularly racist guard was attacked. I was implicated in the accident, and 3 days later, Buck, Zaire, and I were all locked up in solitary confinement for the incident and given 48 months in security housing unit, the SHU. Buck and I were sent to San Quentin, and Zaire was sent to Folsom. We appealed the decision to put us in the hole based on confidential information, but the appeal was denied. They did, however, reduce our sentence to 28 months. I cannot begin to describe how I felt as the prison bus rolled through the massive gates at San Quentin. An incredible sense of destiny seemed to overtake me. And with each successive foot, the bus moved forward. Additional layers of the old me seemed to peel away. When the bus swung around the lower yard and I saw the native nation, American Indian, teepees and sweat lodges enclosed by a chain link fence, I sat upright in my seat. "This is the house that George Jackson built," Buck said. "He had been here several times. You'll feel the comrade strong here. Bro, you'll read books here, see things that are gonna change the way you walk, talk, and think. This is the best place for an aspiring young revolutionary. This is repression at its best." We filed off the bus under the watchful eye of gunmen with Mini 14s. The shotgun had been phased out because it failed to disable attacking prisoners. The Mini 14 is an assault weapon. It shoots a 223 round, as does the M16 and the AR-15. We moved from the bus to R&R, guards on the huge industrial walls catwalk watching us from above. San Quentin is 100 years older than Chino, and it shows. As soon as we got inside of R&R, the pigs took Buck to the adjustment center, which is like the triple max unit. I would be spared this time and only put in double max. I was being sent to East Block, and 2 others, a Chicano and a native brother, were being taken to North Block. They were escorted out first. 10 minutes later, I was taken out of R&R in leg and wrist chains, marched up across the upper yard and into East Block. When I stepped in, I was astounded. I was dwarfed by the unit. It looked like a huge slave ship. There were 5 tiers, and they were so long that if you were at one end, it would be impossible for you to recognize someone at the other end. I was put in a holding cage and stripped. The chains were removed, and I was handcuffed. The awesome size of the block continued to blow me away. I was apprehensive as well. Damn, this was the major league, the big house, the real penitentiary. It was the ultimate test of faith, courage, and strength. I was taken up 2 flights of stairs to the 2nd tier and walked down. I got mad dog stares from every occupant in the tiny cells along the way. New Africans, Chicanos, and Americans, all in single-man cells. I was put in 2 East 26. My neighbor in 25 was an American, and to my right in number 27 was a Chicano. Once I got in my cell, the handcuffs were removed. There was a bed with bed springs that could be used to make ice pick knives, a sink, and a toilet. There were 2 circular vents, one above the sink and another below it. The American and the Chicano were talking to each other, seemingly about nothing in particular. But just by hearing them talk, I knew that the Chicano was a Southern Mexican and the American was a Nazi. The unholy alliance. I began to feel around under the bed for loose metal, something I could pull or yank out that I could fashion into a weapon for spearing. Might as well start my time here right off. One of these cats is going to get speared. I found a piece of metal loose enough to get my hand under, so I slid halfway beneath the bed, braced my foot against the wall, and began to pull violently. Heave ho, heave ho. Back and forth I pulled until it moved with ease under pressure. Just a few more, plink, and I had it. A piece of bed railing 11 inches long. Now I had to sharpen it, get some newspaper, and roll me up a spear. I'd attach the blade and then just wait for either a Sureño or Nimzugu, a European. Hey, 26, the American and Chicano went silent. Hey, 26. 26, that was me. Someone was calling my cell number. Hey, 26, yeah, get that line in front of your cell. I looked out on the tier and a clear medicine bag with a white line attached to it was in front of my cell, so I retrieved it. Pull it, said the sender. Attached to the line was a kite. I opened it and it read, Salumu Ndugu. Where did you come from? I am Lil Bit from Bounty Hunter. Next to you is an AB and on the other side is an MA. Stay up, stay alert. Blood love, Lil Bit. Hey, Lil Bit, yeah, I need a pen to get back. Alright, pull the line. I retrieved the pen and wrote back telling him that I was Sanyika from CCO and that I came from Soledad. I told him of his people from Bounty Hunter who were down there, and I added that I planned to bust my neighbors at the first opportunity. He wrote back telling me to hold on, that he had to get at his tier captain first. He withdrew his line from my cell and flung it down the tier toward the front with an ease that came from experience. When he pulled his line back, there was another line attached to it. He told me to grab it. I was now plugged into the tier captain. He told me to pull and I reeled in his line. There was another kite attached to the end. It read, Ujambu Senyika. I am Italo from Black Gorilla family. Perhaps you know some of my tribesmen. All your people are in the back. We, BGF and BL, have a peace treaty with the AB and MA on this tier. I suggest that you get at your folks about a cell move in struggle, Italo. Peace treaty? What was that? I wrote him and said that I overstood about their agreement with the brands and the flies, but CCO ain't got no treaty with them. But out of respect for the brothers on the tier, I wouldn't jeopardize them. He then sent me Wretched to the Earth by Frantz Fanon, which was no good to me because I couldn't read that well. And at the time, Franz seemed very, very heavy to me. I tried nevertheless and continued to fashion my weapon. 3 days later, I was moved to the back bar where my comrades were. I was put in cell 2 East 54. All around me were comrades and allies. My neighbor in 53 was Lunatic Frank from Rolling 60s. Lunatic and I were in the Boy Scouts together in 73. We had saved each other's lives during our participation in the war. He and his homies Pie Faced and Ronnie Pace had caught China and me on Denker and 74th Street one night when I was not strapped. We had been at my house making love and she wanted to go home. I was walking her there, pushing Little Monster's bike as we went, when they rolled up on us in Pie's Monte Carlo. Damn, 60s, I whispered to China. Just be cool. They jumped out of the car. Well, I'll be damned, said Pieface, if it ain't Bonnie and Clyde of A-Tray. Monster, Kody, and China. What's up, Pie? I said. I knew all of them. Monster, you packing? Asked Lunatic. You know I am, I shot back, lying. Cuz, that ninja ain't got no gun. Let's smoke these tramps and get out of here, Ronnie Pace said vehemently. No, wait, hold it. I got a better idea, added Pie. Let's take China from Monster. Let her go, man. She ain't got nothing to do with it. What we got going on, I said. Fuck that, began China, but was cut off by Lunatic. Man, this bitch been putting more work in than Lil Bit. If we take her, we can't leave Monster. So what's up, asked Pie. Let's do 'em, man, said Ronnie Pace, looking around nervously. Nah, I'll tell you what. You and Monster go head up, Ronnie. What? Said Ronnie, as if not hearing right. Head up? This ninja didn't go head up with our homies he caught slipping. Ain't no head up in war, he shouted and drew his weapon. And he ain't got no gun, cause he would have already shot us. Ronnie was scared to fight, and I zeroed in on that and used it. Yeah, I'll go head up with cuz, I said. I'm a killer, not a fighter, he shot back. Now either we kill these two, let's go, said Lunatic, interrupting Ronnie. You owe me one, Monster. You too, China, he said over his shoulder. And they got in the car and drove off. China and I did an about face, went back to Mom's house and constructed a plan of attack. Not 3 weeks later, Trey Stone came around the corner on 80th and Howdale with Lunatic on the barrel of his gun, a prisoner of war. Trey Stone was the happiest I had ever seen him. He wanted everyone to see his prisoner. Let him go, Stone, I said grudgingly. What? Said Stone, not believing he'd heard correctly. I owe cuz one. Turn him loose. Damn, cuz, but this Lunatic Frank, I know who he is. Let him go. Can I just shoot him in the leg or knock one of his teeth out? Nah, he let me and China pass one night, so I owe him. Shit, exclaimed Stone. Now, 6 years later, he was my neighbor. He went by the name Akili Simba and was a CCO. On the other side of me was a northern Chicano named Curly. That first night, Akili and I talked all night on the telephone, which was made out of a television cable. He had pulled all the wiring out of the black rubber skin, and we used it for a private conversation between selves. The next day, I had to turn my paperwork over to the intelligence officer of CCOs so he could make sure I wasn't a rat. To those I didn't know, I introduced myself as Sanyika, and I instructed those who knew me as Monster to call me by my Swahili name. The transformation had begun, and I had made a conscious effort to make attachments, connections. Akili and Kumbwa, Simba, Lebo from Front Hood, and my closest comrade helped me sharpen my Swahili to a fine point. Within 9 months, I had a small class of my own. My education at San Quentin was very easy because there were new Africans who cared. A senior taught me the necessity of mathematics. Taliba taught me to recognize our culture as being distinct from Americans, and Zaire, not the name man as my co-defendant, taught me to be scientific. These brothers were Crips, CCO scholars, and theoreticians. No English was spoken over the tier after 6 p.m. No foul language was permitted or used in reference to new African men or women. We had a mandatory study period from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. The study period was also a quiet period where no talking was allowed. 7 a.m. also heralded the alert period, when every soldier was to be up and out of his kintanda, bed, and dressed. At 9 p.m., the alert period ended. Around this time, Tamu had somehow tracked down Dick Bass, and he'd given her his address to pass on to me. I tried to write to him, but found the pain too great. I began the first page with normal greeting, but then, naturally, the questions started to surface. Where have you been? And why did you abandon me? Eventually, it came to, I needed you, man. And you weren't there for me, and it's people like you who contribute to the destruction of people like me. As the questions flowed, so did the pain, heart-wrenching pain that made me feel emotionally unstable. I didn't know how to write things down at the time, to communicate my feelings. I wasn't able to finish the letter, just mailed it half finished, like his fatherhood had done to me. He never wrote back, which didn't surprise me at all. Through this, I learned that I had to be a real father to my own children, no matter what. The pain I was experiencing because of my parents' promiscuity and father's lack of responsibility was not something I wanted my children to feel. Blue June was slated as a month to remember the fallen soldiers and citizens of the Sea Nation. We went to the small shoe yard 3 times a week, mandatory for all soldiers, and ran while doing the universal crip cadence. Then we'd exercise and fall into our classes. Only after this could we play basketball or lift weights. After 10 months, I began to lead the exercises. I quickly made the transition from soldier to sergeant of arms to intelligence officer. I believed in what we were doing. I was introduced to Fidel Castro, Amilcar Cabral, Ho Chi Minh, Kim Tu-sung, and George Jackson. My reading picked up, and so did my writing skills. We were given a test on the contents of each book we read and were expected to write a book report about it. The reviewers were stern, and there was no favoritism. I failed so many times that it's not even funny. I kept at it though, and in time became one of the sharpest in the cadre. Muhammad kept writing and sending me literature, which helped me a lot. He sent one pamphlet called "We Were Marx and Engels, White Racists," which I thought was outstanding. Here were Marx and Engels blowing about internationalism while neglecting to include the majority of the world's people who were of color. We all considered ourselves communists in the CCO. Once, when I asked the unit if communism wasn't actually a Eurocentric philosophy, they all jumped all over me as if I had committed blasphemy, as I learned communism, as practiced in the Soviet Union, was Eurocentric, and Soviet internationalist duty was looking more and more like imperialist conquest. But I still wanted to know what movement we were attached to, and I complained to the cadre commanders about it. What was our goal as an organization? Who were we trying to liberate? This is where their knowledge fell short. No one was thinking that far ahead. No one realized that the future was 3 minutes ahead of us, not light years away. As Tamu says, with everything I do, I try my best, and rightfully so. I am an extremist, so I took our revolutionary premise seriously. As I grew and my conscience expanded, I began to see cracks and faults in our structure. We were making the same mistakes that the Black Panthers had made. We were importing revolutionary ideals, trying to apply them to our setting. In this light, those who could quote Marx, Mao, and Comrade George the most were the sharpest. It began to irritate the hell out of me. Nothing was corresponding with concrete conditions, and we had no mass appeal. On top of this, our troops sent back out into Babylon were falling prey to parochialism and tribalism. One such case that caused a problem was that Mumbles from the 60s. He was supposed to try to get his homies to stop clocking our hood in an attempt to slow down the war, but Mumbles fell back into banging and was clocked on Florence and Normandy. The homies stepped to him and he dissed the hood. He was executed. In response, my young homie Joker's door was kicked in and his innocent 65-year-old mother and 14-year-old brother were deliberately murdered. Because Mumbles was CCO, they put a blue light on Joker, who had supposedly executed Mumbles. I argued that CCO couldn't blue light any uncultured Crip for killing a comrade who was in the wrong. Joker was involved in the war and had no idea of what CCO was at that time. He was not responsible to us, but Mumbles was. Mumble was out of bounds, clocked out and tagged in a free fire zone. If anyone should have been blue lighted, it was the cowards who murdered Joker's people. It was things like this that caused me to question the leadership of the organization. Also, we had to contend with the new Crip organization, the Blue Notes. They saw themselves as traditionalists and saviors of the Crip culture. The organization was started on death row by treacherous and evil from Raymond Avenue Crips and was supposedly headed by Tookie. BNCO, Blue Note Crip organization, gave uncultured Crips an alternative to the rigid, more disciplined organization of CCO, which they accused of being too much like the BGFs. They further accused the CCO leadership of abandoning the protocols of Crip terrorism for some unattainable revolutionary utopia. The BNCO blossomed quickly because it appealed to the patriotic sense of Cripping. They also had such stalwart generals as Tookie, Tretch, and Evil, who all are extremely smart and courageous. Other maladies befell the leadership at Folsom, where the Mexican Mafia was winning the war. 2 Hoovers were stabbed for bringing unsanctioned weapons to the yard. Tony Stacy charged the Central Committee with tribalism and called for all Hoovers in the state to resign from CCO. That was a big blow to the organization. Imagine all the Americans pulling out of the Democratic Party. The fatal blow came when the Central Committee agreed to a peace treaty with the Mexican Mafia, then turned around and declared war on the Blue Notes. The Hoovers sided with the BNCO and shit began to fall apart. San Quentin was exempt from none of this. The BNCO took off and stabbed Kidogo, Rabbit, and Rojo. The Hoovers stabbed Nachi and Taliba. The CCO struck back and stabbed Glenn, Kincaid, and Spark. Shit got crazy fast. I cut my bed up for weapons with the hacksaw blade, but was caught by a snooping pig. They charged me with destruction of state property and billed me $180 for the bed. I went to my hearing the same day the pigs killed Weusi, a blood from Pasadena, for defending himself against a Southern Mexican who was also shot and killed. I refused to sign the trust withdrawal to pay for the bed, saying, I don't make deals with terrorists who shoot and kill African people. The pig turned dark red and told the escort pigs to lock me up. The most important connection I made was through Muhammad, with the New African Independence Movement. I received the New African ideological formulation material and it redeemed me. It gave me answers to all the questions I had about myself in relation to the society. I learned about how our situation in this country was that of an oppressed nation, colonized by capitalist imperialists. The science was strong and precise. I saw then that all the talk of the Sea Nation was actually an aspiration of our nationalistic reality. Once I understood the New African ideology and pledged my allegiance to the Republic of the New Africans' independence, I began to see Crippin' in a different light. There was a faction in CCO at the time claiming to be revolutionary Crips, but this was contradictory and could not be attained without transforming the criminal ideology of Crip and its relation to the masses of people, so the debate was on. In 1987, we disbanded the CCO in San Quentin. It had failed to evolve because the leadership had failed to realize that real revolution is futuristic, not static. Muhammad came to see me and we had a good visit. I believe he was seeing my growth. My tests would come in the real world of society. In 1987, I met a sister named Akiba Daruba Shakur, whom I affectionately called Adumu. She was a student at Cal State, Long Beach, and an aspiring revolutionary. Muhammad had introduced us through the mail, and she and I began to write and discuss politics in the future. All of my influences were positive. Those that were not, I excluded. That same year, I was let out of the hole and sent to Folsom. All the generals and the Central Committee members were there. Askari, Suma, Amara, Tabari, Sunni, and Talib. The Crip population was totally antagonistic toward them, with the exception of Talib, who became my confidant. He saw things as I did, so I turned him on to the New African Independence Movement. After 6 months of ideological struggle with the others, trying to get them to make up the leap with us, Talib and I left the Crips and threw our lot in with the independence movement.